The world was plunged in a global health and financial crisis due to the COVID-19 pandemic, causing lockdowns and strict implementation of health protocols that affected the economies and livelihood of millions of people around the world. And that includes the Philippines. As if it was not enough, a war among neighboring nations unfolded, displacing millions of people from their homes, hundreds if not thousands of deaths, including innocent civilians and children brought about by geopolitical and security issues.
Breaking news in Eastern Europe. Russian President Vladimir Putin announced on Russian state television that it will conduct a special military operation in Ukraine with the objective of saving the Ukrainian people from an oppressive Ukrainian regime and neo-Nazis.
With these clear and present challenges all coming together, people from different walks of life cannot help but wonder on what is going to happen to the world, to humanity, as it faces the present and the future with lingering uncertainties.
Private motorists and public utility drivers in the Philippines will expect a huge price increase in their pump stations to as high as 6 to 7 pesos for gasoline and 12 to 13 pesos for diesel. The increase in pump prices is expected to have a domino effect on basic commodities in the market, causing a movement in inflation figures.
In this part of Southeast Asia, the Philippines and its people had to endure the economic repercussions due to the effects of the pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war that brought additional financial burden to Filipinos and to the whole world. During these times, questions are more raised rather than answered. Doubts and fears are constant. The feeling of hopelessness is perceptible among the most disadvantaged people living in less abled countries. And when things seem to be crashing in, leaders of respective countries seem to struggle in giving answers and assurance to anxious and to some extent desperate people. And as a respite from the heavy yoke thrust upon them, people turn to their beliefs and faith for hope. The Philippines, as a predominantly Catholic country, has been colonized by the Spaniards for more than 3 centuries and has left its influence on almost all aspects of Filipinos' lives, especially our culture and tradition. Among these are strong faith in God and Catholicism. In times of hardships and challenges, the Filipinos turn to their religion, to their faith, praying that amidst all of the seemingly endless problems, there is still hope. But can religion or faith or a belief to a higher being really provides answers, comfort, or assurance? Does religion still have a strong hold in our daily lives, having faith that God, or whoever we may call him, will save us from this situation and give light and hope back to humanity? I am Ven Blones, and this is a documentary program titled Hope in the Midst of Darkness, a Radyo Pilipinas Worldwide Lenten presentation. Join us as we examine how the Philippines, being a predominantly Catholic country in Southeast Asia, observe the Catholic's tradition in celebrating the Lent season. Find out whether this tradition remains relevant and still hold precious meaning to this day and age. Let us first explore how the Filipinos developed their religiosity and how the Philippines became a predominantly Catholic country. A public historian and a member of Philippine Historical Association, Mr. Danilo Lumabas, offers an insightful explanation on this.
Palataya. Kasi matatandaan natin, mayroong tatlong mahalagang pinuno noon sa isang barangay. Ang mga datu, ang mga babaylan, at ang mga panday. Kung ang datu ang siya namumunong pinakapinunong politikal sa isang barangay, ang babaylan ang siya nagsisilbi naman pinunong pang-espiritual naman noon sa isang barangay. Ang ating mga ninunong Pilipino noon ay naniniwala sa mga espiritu o kaluluwa na nananahan sa ating paligid. Makikita natin kung gaano kalalim yung paniniwala ng mga sinaunang Pilipino, ng ating mga ninuno na nambuhay noong panahong prekolonyal, at kung paano itong lalim ng espiritualidad nila ay nadala natin hanggang sa kasalukuyang panahon.
Before the Filipinos were converted to Catholicism, they have always displayed respect and reverence to their elders. They recognized the sacredness of the body of the deceased, and they believed in life after death.
Una, mataas ang pagtingin at paggalang ng mga Pilipino noon sa kanilang mga yumao sa buhay, at meron silang konsepto ng kabilang buhay. So kung matatanda natin sa ginagawa nating pag-aaral, karaniwan sa mga Pilipino noon, especially mga pinunong mga datu, ay nilalaanan ng mga iba't ibang paraan kung paano ng pagpaparangal sa kanya. Hinuhugasan ng bangkay, dinadamitan ng mga mararangyang kasuotan, pinagpaparangalan siya na kung ilang araw, and then kapag siya ililibing na, siya magdadaan sa isang proseso kung saan ililibing siya sa isang primary at secondary burial jars. Inaawitan pa nga actually ang mga datu noon at mga pinuno noon. And yung gaytong pagpaparangal natin sa mga nakatataas na tao sa lipunan ay naitawid natin sa aspeto ng Santo Inchero. Diba kung matatanda na, makikita natin ang Santo Inchero sa pananampalatayang Katoliko. Pinupunasan natin siya, dinadamitan ng marangya ng mga burdadong damit, inaawitan ng pasyon, pinararangalan. So, yung mataas na paggalang ng mga Pilipino sa kanilang mga yumao sa buhay at sa mga yumao nilang mga nakatataas sa lipunan ay naitawid natin hanggang sa kasalukuyang panahon.
The Filipinos' practice of class system in the olden days provided their inclination to accord those belonging to the higher strata as gods. There are those called the Maginoo, the Maharlika, the Timagwa, and the Alipin, a clear distinction of a person's definite status in society. So, when the Spaniards came to the Philippines using religion as a strategy for their colonialism, the Filipinos recognized its resemblance to their indigenous customs. We would be amiss not to mention resistance, for there were some who were defiant, but generally, Filipinos accepted Catholicism easily.
So, naging madali para sa mga Pilipino na tanggapin ang pananampalatayang Kristiyano dahil nakita nila na mayroong pagkakaugnay. Una, ang mga Pilipino kasi ay, bagamat marami mga kinikilalang mga anito, o mga anito sa Luzon o diwata sa Visayas, meron pa rin silang kinikilalang Supreme Being. At ito ay naiugnay ng ating mga ninuno nung may pinakilala na sa atin ang relihiyong Kristyanismo. Ikalawa, yung paniniwala natin sa mga anito at sa mga diwata, nakita nila ito sa anyo ng iba't ibang mga santo at mga banal na pinagpaparangalan natin ngayon. Ikatlo, may ilang mga practices na nagkaroon ng tinatawag na syncretization, na mga practices na ginagawa before na naikabit sa pananampalatayang Kristiyano. One clear example is the Kasilunawan Festival na ginagawa sa Ubando. Kasilunawan, yung nagsasayaw yung mga nagnanais magkaroon ng anak, naghahanap ng asawa. Dati na ang Ubando sa lalawigan ng Bulacan ay dati nang pinupuntahan noong panahon pre-colonial pa sa mga ganitong klase ng mga petisyon. And then dumating na mga Franciscans sa bahagi ng Bulacan, lalo na dito sa Ubando, nakita nila na ito na may practice na ng pagsasayaw upang humili ay naiugnay, naikabit sa sa tradisyon nangyayari ngayon sa bahagi na ito ng Ubando, Bulacan. So may mga traces ng folk practices sa ilang mga gawain ngayon dito sa kaugaliang Pilipino. Kasi just like what I've said, Filipinos are very very visual. Kaya nga nung dumating ang mga Espanyol, hindi naging mahirap sa kanila na i-instill ang relihiyong Kristyanismo kasi nga una, pinakilala ang prosesyon. Ang prosesyon, lalo na kapag mahal na araw, magpapakita ito ng iba't ibang mga pasos del misteryo ng naging buhay at naging paghihirap ng Panginoong Hesus. Na-amaze dito ang mga Pilipino. Pinakilala ang mga pista, which is a very visual celebration, at naging madali itong tanggapin. Pinalaganap ang pananampalatayang Katoliko sa pamagitan ng mga polyeto, ng mga nobena, at madali itong naintindihan ng mga Pilipino because Filipinos are very visual. Madaling na-instill ang relihiyong Kristyanismo because nailimbag ang doktrina Kristiyana. Na madaling naintindihan yun, mga dasal at mga basic tenets of the Catholic belief.
Filipinos also believed in Catholicism so easily because they mirrored the roles of the babaylans to the roles of the priests. This means that the familiarity of the practice allowed the Filipinos to feel more consolation rather than subjugation during the Spanish colonialization. Filipino historian Zeus Salazar explained that the babaylans have three important roles. First, they serve as the link between the people and the gods. Second, they are the healers of the sick. And third, they are the keepers and tellers of culture in the forms of songs and epics. In the same way, the priests link the people to God through the celebration of the Mass. They were healers too in many ways. They offer healing prayers. History says Spanish friars in the Philippines during that time studied the country's medicinal plants to help the sick. They are also the storytellers of the Passion of Jesus Christ, considered as the modern epic that people know today.
Pananampalatayang Kristiyano, halimbawa, yung paniniwala natin sa mga imahen, sa mga santo, nakita ito kasi ito'y nagkakahawig kapag sila'y humihingi ng tulong sa ilang mga anito na kanilang pinaniniwalaan dati. Ito, yung practice na lang sa mahal na araw. Ang practice kasi natin, particularly sa mahal na araw, ay very indigenized. Nakaikot to sa pasyon. So, nakita ng mga Pilipino, batay sa daloy ng kwento ng pasyon, ang buhay, kamatayan, muling pagkabuhay ng Panginoong Hesukristo. Kaya na-identify ito ng mga Pilipino na ganito yung pinagdadaanan nating mga Pilipino sa kasalukuyang panahon. Mararanasan natin yung maayos, yung dark side of our lives, and then magre-resurrect tayo. Yung inaasahan natin pagkabuhay na magulit, matamo natin ang kaluwalhatian.
It is believed that the liturgy reflects the same among Catholics even in different parts of the world. But the Philippines is different in its practice. Its religious traditions are indigenized.
Meron din yung paraan ng yung ginagawang pagsusuplina. Pagsusuplina is yung pagpipinitensya ng ilang mga tao, lalo na kapag mahal na araw. Kakikitaan din ito ng mga gawain sa Mexico, sa Spain. Pero dito sa Pilipinas, mayroon tayong sariling paraan ng pagsasagawa ng pagsusuplina natin dito. Halimbawa, yung ginagawa dito sa may Kapitangan, sa may bahagi ng Ombong sa Bulacan. ah, nagsasagwa sila diyan ng penitensya kung saan yung iba ang ginagawa parang ginuguhitan yata dito sa likod ng
Ang blade,
razor
oo.
blade. And then doon pa na sila maghahataw. Yung iba naman, yung mismong mga pansuplina nila, meron ng mga spikes. Yun ang ginagamit nila panghataw, which is very different sa ibang bansa naman.
These religious practices have been challenged for the past 2 years. In fact, Filipino parish priests have observed changes in the practices of Filipinos belonging to the Catholic Church, especially during the pandemic.
There's so much happening in 2 years of pandemic, especially in view of our faith, since most of them cannot attend physically, in the celebration of the Holy Eucharist, and at the same time, we do not have the usual or traditional devotions like now that we are in the start of Holy Week, especially the pabasa or procession or something na in relation with our faith. So I guess although we have the pandemic, but the faith of the people still intact, intact in a way that they long for the celebration of the Holy Eucharist, especially the Mass, and the preparation or in celebration of having the communion, receiving the communion, especially in the celebration of the Holy Eucharist.
Perhaps Father Tawagon was right to assert the faith of the members of the Catholic Church even in times of difficulties. Rick Lorenzo, a Catholic devotee, shares how technology aided the continuity of religious practices in observance of Holy Week during the pandemic and how his faith grew stronger even in the midst of chaos.
Malaking kaibahan nga noong nakaraang 2 taon. Walang masyadong celebration ng nung Semana Santa. Dahil nga, umiiwas tayo sa COVID-19 para di makahawalik ang tao. Kaya anong nangyayari? Meron online na ginagawa. Bilang pagdudunta sa Semana Santa, yung bang tumatawag doon? Yung mga Semana Santa na
Facebook Live.
O, ganun, Facebook Live. O kaya yung mga palabas na tungkol sa sinakulo. Yun ang nakikita kong nangyayari nung panahon ng pandemya. Kasi pag nakakaroon ko ng mga digmaan, away sa mga lugar, sabi lagi natin binamigay itong kailan ba matatapos itong ganitong pangyayari. Lagi natin binamigay ang Panginoon. Kailan ba matatapos yung mga ganitong krisis. Kaya ang ginagawa natin, puro dasal na lang ng dasal para magkaroon daw ng world peace.
Ano yung
Mas
mga plano
kaya,
niya?
habang may nagaganap na krisis, lalo lumalakas ang pananampalataya ng tao. Habang may singalon, lalo lumalakas tayo.
Palataya.
Ang mensahe ko lang sa bawat Katoliko, o hindi man Katoliko, o ibang reliyon. Isa lang naman ang Diyos natin eh. Lakasan natin ang loob sa panahon ng krisis at lagi tayong manalangin sa Kanya. Siya lang naman magliligtas sa atin eh. Yun lang.
It is true what they said, that we do not always get what we want, but we get what we need. Such is the manifestation when we ask for faith, but are blessed with challenges that makes us faithful. Susan Aison, another Catholic devotee, shares us her moving testimonial.
Ako personally,
Opo.
may mga pagsubok din ako. Pero yun ang nagpapalakas sa akin, kaya ako naging prayerful dahil sa mga nangyari sa amin. Pero nafe-feel ko talaga na kapag magdasal pala tayo, nandyan talaga yung blessing na bibigay ng Lord. Lalo na pag nagdasal tayo, karoon tayo ng wisdom maramdaman, malaman mo na ganito pala, kaya pala nangyari sa buhay natin, dahil kailangan natin lumapit. Magdasal tayo sa Kanya. Huwag natin ibaliwala. Naiyak ako.
Okay lang.
Generally, the people's faith, as a Filipino, we have so much faith in God. Ano? As a Filipino, we have so much faith in God, given that Philippines is said as a island in love with God. So because of that, because of our deep Filipino Catholic trait, it leads us to our deeper faith in God, especially now that we experience 2 years of pandemic. We have the news of Ukraine and Russia war, and also we have the different threats in our environment, not just the China or whatever, but also our everyday life, everyday problem or consequences that we experience. We always pray to God. That's why we have the term, bahala na ang Diyos. So bahala na ang Diyos is not just for us to have leave the problem to God, but we ask the intercession or the intervention of God ahead of our problem. So that's why we have the deeper faith in God, despite of the pandemic and other things that happening in the world.
Mr. Danilo Lumabas actually throws light on this exceptional resiliency of the Filipino people in the midst of difficult circumstances. According to him, he really does not want to sensationalize this resiliency. He believes that Filipinos are resilient because it is a necessity, that bad things are happening in their surroundings and in the society in general, and so they do not have a choice other than to be strong.
Sa pagiging resilient ng ating mga Pilipino, dito humuhugot ang ating mga kapwa Pilipino ng pagiging matatag nila mula doon sa kanilang pananampalataya sa Diyos. Tinuruan kasi tayo ng ating pananampalataya na tanggapin ang mga hamon at mga pagsubok na dumarating sa atin. Kasi dahil sa paniniwala na sa mga pagsubok na dumarating sa atin, naririyan ang Panginoong Jesus na lagi nakaagapay sa atin. At ito yung paniniwala na pinansasandigan nating mga Pilipino.
Filipinos, the true embodiment of resiliency, known to persist in spite of disasters, chaos, and struggles, but more importantly, a resiliency inspired from faith. Faith is seeing light despite all the darkness, whether this be internal struggles or external challenges. Humanity is facing a critical point in their lifetime, having to live in times of pandemic and war. Now, more than ever, people's faith are tested. Times like this humbles us, with many turning to prayers. This Lenten season, let us ponder on our faith and remember that we are answerable to our actions. May we learn to fulfill our contribution for the betterment of this world and humanity. And may we find this season a time to reflect on our purpose in this world. And this is Radyo Pilipinas Worldwide Holy Week documentary, Hope in the Midst of Darkness.